Reading what the president has tweeted, it looks like at this moment we are avoiding all-out war or a further escalation of military action. Because I've read what the Iranian prime minister has said and what the president of the United States has said, and it looks like there's reason to be hopeful about avoiding all-out war. President Trump tweets, "All is well. Missiles launched from Iran at 2 military bases located in Iraq. Assessment of casualties and damages taking place now. So far, so good. We have the most powerful and well-equipped military anywhere in the world, by far. I will be making a statement tomorrow morning." And here's a tweet from Iran's foreign minister, which is also a positive sign. It says, Iran took and concluded proportionate measures in self-defense under Article 51 of UN Charter, targeting base from which cowardly armed attack against our citizens and senior officials were launched. We do not seek escalation of war, but we will defend ourselves against any aggression. That and President Trump's all is well tweet is a positive sign and gives hope that maybe we're avoiding all-out war. Given no apparent casualties, several White House and Department of Defense officials are urging Donald Trump not to retaliate. Iran got U.S. soldiers to hunker down for a few hours. Trump got Soleimani. Trump's staff say the trade-off is a win, though one hopes he don't gloat. The Iranian attack was launched at 1:20 a.m. local time, Iranian officials said, noting it was the precise time the U.S. missile strike that killed Soleimani as he left Baghdad's airport. So we're hopeful we're avoiding all-out war because it would be catastrophic.
This is what I'm very concerned about, because I know that cost on our troops, on the American people, on civilians across the Middle East and the region, creating more refugees, creating more instability in Europe. I mean, the cost would be very great. So help me God. President Trump promised us during his campaign to get the United States out of stupid wars.
You said he lied. He got us into the war with lies.
Obviously, the war in Iraq was a big, fat mistake.
We spent $2 trillion, thousands of lives. We don't even have it. Iran is taking over Iraq with the second largest oil reserves in the world. Obviously, it was a mistake.
So
George Bush made a mistake. We should have never been in Iraq. We have destabilized the Middle East. I want to tell you, they lied.
Okay.
They said there were weapons of mass destruction. There were none, and they knew there were none. There were no weapons of mass destruction.
All right. Governor Bush.
We are there to deter aggression. President Trump does not want war.
For those that think we can trust this administration, listen to what Pompeo says.
As for these critiques, President Trump didn't say he'd go after a cultural side. Read what he said very closely.
Read Trump's tweet. He did say targeting cultural sites.
We have targeted 52 Iranian sites, some at a very high level and important to Iran and the Iranian culture. As you know, the Geneva Conventions outlaw attacks on cultural objects and places of worship. Our own DoD war manual discusses protection of cultural property. So why is the president threatening Iran with war crimes?
Yeah, we'll behave lawfully. We'll behave inside the system. We always have, and we always will.
Pompeo has repeatedly lied, claiming Trump didn't say he would attack cultural sites.
Question about the issue of cultural sites, because the president said on Air Force One coming back, after you had been on the Sunday talk shows, that they're allowed to kill our people, they're allowed to torture and maim our people, they're allowed to use roadside bombs and blow up our people, and we're not allowed to touch their cultural sites. It doesn't work that way. Defense Secretary Esper has made it clear that he would not follow an order to hit a cultural site, which would be a war crime. I'm wondering whether you would also push back in your advice or in your role.
You're not really wondering, Andrea. You're not really wondering. I was unambiguous on Sunday. It is completely consistent with what the president has said.
Let's be clear here. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is saying something different than what President Trump has suggested. The secretary insists that the U.S. will not conduct any action that operates outside the bounds of international laws. Striking a cultural site, as the president has suggested he wants to do, would in fact violate those international laws. And so there is a discrepancy there between what President Trump has said just on Sunday, seeming to double down on that, and what we are hearing from Secretary Pompeo.
Look at this. Trump reportedly seeks Adelson's advice amid differences with Bolton.
And I'd like to now ask the military aide to come forward and read the citations for each recipient of the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Miriam Adelson.
Keep in mind Sheldon Adelson's priorities.
All we care about is being good Zionists, being good citizens of Israel, because even though I'm not Israeli born, Israel is in my heart. I am not Israeli. The uniform that I wore in the military, unfortunately, was not an Israeli uniform. It was an American uniform. 4 of my 5 children are all Israeli. And I guess the one who's being bar mitzvahed will volunteer to be a sniper. He's a gun freak. Either that or he'll fly their predators.
Keep in mind Sheldon Adelson's agenda.
What do you mean support negotiation? What are we going to negotiate about? What I would say is, listen, you see that desert out there? I want to show you something. So you pick up your cell phone and you call somewhere in Nebraska and you say, okay, let it go. So there's an atomic weapon goes over ballistic missiles in the middle of the desert that doesn't hurt a soul. And then you say, see, the next one is in the middle of Tehran.
They're thugs putting us at risk of another war in the Middle East.
It is almost impossible to imagine that after the horror of the war in Iraq, when we were lied to by the Bush administration, that we would once again go to war in that region. A war in Iran would, in my view, be many times worse than the Iraq war. U.S. military leaders have repeatedly told us if the United States were to attack Iran, Iran would respond with attacks on U.S. troops and allies around the world. It would lead to the further destabilization of that region in a way that is unimaginable and would result in wars that would go on year after year after year and likely cost trillions of dollars. The United States Congress must do everything it can to prevent a war with Iran. And by the way, not inconsequentially, the Constitution of the United States is very clear, and that is that it is the Congress and not the president who determines whether or not we go to war. Taking us into a war without congressional authorization would be unconstitutional and illegal. We do not need to fight another unnecessary war.
We have presidents in both parties for too long who've completely ignored Congress's constitutional responsibility to declare war. Congress is the one that has to bear that responsibility, and it's a great responsibility to declare war, to authorize the use of military force.
Remember how we got into the Vietnam War through the Gulf of Tonkin resolution, and it turns out that the so-called attack in the Gulf of Tonkin did not actually take place. It was based on a series of lies.
Renewed hostile actions against United States ships on the high seas in the Gulf of Tonkin have today required me to order the military forces of the United States take action in reply.
So I worry about provocations on the part of the United States against Iran, and I worry very much that this thing could flare up. What is going on right now feels to me exactly what I saw in 2002 and 2003, and that was the lead up and the justification for the war in Iraq. I opposed that war vigorously. All of that suffering, all of that death, all of that huge expenditures of money, for what? It gives me no pleasure to tell you that at this moment, we face a similar crossroads fraught with danger. Once again, we must worry about unintended consequences and the impact of unilateral decision-making. And let me repeat a warning I gave in 2002 during the debate over the war in Iraq. Quote, this is what I said back then. War must be the last recourse in our international relations. And as a caring nation, we must do everything we can to prevent the horrible suffering that a war will cause, end of quote. As the former chair of the U.S. Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, I have seen close up the pain, the death, and the despair caused by war. I've gone to too many funerals in my own state. I've talked to too many mothers who have lost their kids in war. I have talked to too many soldiers, men and women, who have come home with PTSD, who have come home without arms and without legs. And I know that it is rarely the children of the billionaire class who face the agony of reckless foreign policy. It is the children of working families.
I'll put a link to a petition to remove Trump from office in the video description. Please sign it, and we'll use it as a way to amplify our anti-war pleas.